call to order the January 30th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting. Starting with the Open Meetings Act. So the Nebraska Open Meetings Act legislates the methods by which public meetings are conducted. Information pertaining to this act is posted here in the boardroom. Our purpose and direction. The purpose of the North Platte Public School District is to prepare all students to be productive, responsible citizens in a safe, caring, supportive learning environment. Our direction is to prepare every student for success through high-quality educational programs delivered by highly effective educators who use innovative, research-based strategies in a safe, supportive environment in collaboration with family, businesses, and community members. Sheila, can I get roll call?
Justin Thompson.
Here.
Emily Garrett.
Present.
Brandon Reed. Cindy O'Connor.
Present.
Skip Ballton.
Present.
Andrew Lacy.
Present.
I move that we excuse Joanne Lundgren from the committee of the whole.
Second. And roll call.
Emily Garrett.
Aye.
Cindy O'Connor.
Aye.
Skip Ballton.
Aye.
Andrew Lacy.
Aye.
Justin Thompson.
Aye.
All right, approval of publication. I would entertain a motion to approve the publication of the January 30th, 2025 meeting of the Committee of the Whole.
I'll make a motion to approve the publication for the January 30th, 2025 meeting of the whole.
Second. Roll call, Sheila.
Cindy O'Connor.
Aye.
Skip Ballton.
Aye.
Andrew Lacy.
Aye.
Justin Thompson.
Aye.
Emily Garrett.
Aye. All right, and now to approve the agenda for the January 30th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for the January 30th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
Cindy O'Connor. Aye. Skip Ballton.
Aye.
Andrew Lacy.
Aye.
Justin Thompson.
Aye.
Emily Garrett.
All right, we'll stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, board engagement. And we have listed here the week of January 26th is School Board Recognition Week in Nebraska. So thank you to those of you here serving on our board and to the 1,700 locally elected volunteers who make up the boards of education for Nebraska's public schools and ESUs. Through their leadership, innovation, vision, and engagement, they make Nebraska a better place to live. And I was told that you had something that turned time for just a moment. Feels a little awkward as the board members are.
Who's my president?
Carnival Eisenhower friends made this with your hands down, US board around. So this is hand created, quite literally, for all of you. And then some of our younger staff made you a gift. Yeah. So thank you all for everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's very thoughtful.
Thank you.
You get to open them now. You get to watch it over.
Thank you.
Thank you. We need these sometimes at work.
Can we keep them at our? Thank you all. Seriously.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the district, thank you for serving and your commitment to our kids. It's not with this board of education, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so under board engagement, I think I gave everybody a heads up about this change, but we do have a couple of kind of specific discussion topics under there. So the first one, all of us were able to attend the ESU 15 and 16 board workshop, which had several sessions. I actually really learned a lot as a board member at those. And so I just wanted to open that up for board members to kind of share what they took away from those sessions, if anybody had any questions, and so that we could also share that information with the others that may be watching or attending the meeting. So, does anybody want to jump in first on takeaways from?
I thought the most intriguing one was about school lands. I knew we had school lands. I did not understand all of what went into it, how much we had, how much money they generate that goes to every school student in the state divided by student in your schools. And then the land that they rent out and sell or whatever, they keep the mineral rights to. And intriguingly, there is a bill that was introduced, and I put two and two together, why they had them here to speak, to sell all the school lands. And then just put that money in the general fund. Which then, once it's out. So I really thought that was the best of the three. The other one, Dave Welch from Milford, who expert on TIOSA. For 30 years, he's been on the board and he's always tries to sell his TIOSA idea, but no senator ever picks it up or anything. And then the Perry Law Firm talking about the various bills that will be coming in, and bills weren't done being introduced at that time, but I thought the presentation was good. They had a couple of young lawyers this time instead of generally their older guys coming in. So I thought very, very educational.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that portion too. I really liked the TIOSA because he just put all of it up with all of the school districts. And TIOSA is very confusing to me. It always has been. So just kind of seeing it all out there, I mean, that's something that I guess we really don't have to worry about what every single person's doing. Stuart does all that. But it was kind of nice to be able to look at it and compare where we are. So I really enjoyed that.
I enjoyed the part about the land, because when I worked for the schools and the taxes would come in, I would see the state apportionment, and I never put that together until we went to that meeting. That was very interesting.
The lands, the thousands of acres that, and then the way they're utilizing them for young people to rent land and start building their lives in Nebraska. I think it's a huge benefit to Nebraskans. They don't really understand it's there. I know I did, the TIOSA was so far over my head, watching all those numbers fly up on the screen. It's wildly interesting. It makes you question a lot of things, but regardless, we know there's budget shortfalls that are going to be being addressed that we're gonna have to deal with locally and across the state. That I don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah, the TIOSA one, I honestly, like, he was running out of time and I was like, we need like 20 more minutes here because that was
Generally, he
like,
talked for like 3 hours.
yeah, well, I could see that.
Seriously, he does.
And he did a great job because he really put things in terms where it's like, you know, even just having that chart up there of all the different elements that go into it, but then he had his spreadsheet was very impressive. But just being able to see how if you make these changes here, how it impacts everybody, really trying to, you know, his goal, I appreciated that his goal in the ideas that he presents was really to get back to the intent and purpose and goal of the original statute surrounding TIOSA and the reasoning behind having it in place. And so I learned a ton, honestly, during that session. And then similarly, the educational lands of funds, that was very very educational. I guess I'm seeing just not even just the benefits for public schools and the monies that come from those lands, but then how they utilize them to help, you know, young agriculture businesses get started and some of those kinds of things that maybe wouldn't happen otherwise. So yeah, super insightful. Did anybody have any questions or anything like that that they wanted to ask or?
Oh, about that.
Yeah, or I mean, just anything that we need to as a district.
I was-
look into.
The attendance is way down from those how they used to be. They used to be probably 150, 200 people. I bet there were about 50 is all this.
Yeah, and but you know, I've noticed that some of the other ones, and obviously I haven't been on the board as long as you have, but are a lot of repetitory information. So I was very excited that it was new,
Yeah.
because I had not heard of those things. I mean, we have heard of POs, but one Stuart came in. But I mean, it was new things. That hadn't been at the ESU that I've been to before, so I like that, and maybe that would excite other school districts to come in. I thought that was good on their part.
Well, they have, this is the second year for both the superintendents at the ESU.
Well, 15 and 16.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's their second year.
yeah.
So,
That makes
they have,
16 used to do their own.
yeah,
And so there is a planning committee that helps plan those events that superintendents are on. I am not on that planning committee, but we generally talk about that at our ESU ADCO to bring in something that's a little bit different. So we knew that there was going to be potential legislative bills attached to the land grants. Public schools are opposed adamantly to that. What is our state apportionment?
About 700,000.
Yeah, so we get 700,000 for state apportionment. Now, that number doesn't change much from year to year. But we can estimate that if those lands were to sell and they would go under the property tax rules, remember that we are not an agricultural district. Now, for your Milfords of the world, where Dave Welsh is a board member of, they have a lot of agri. And so those lands going on their tax rolls might help them to generate more property tax. It would really hurt.
however, there isn't a lot of them east of Grand
No,
Island.
it's, right, it's mainly out here.
It's from Grand Island west where most of them
But
are.
they are now, they pay property taxes on those lands, which they did not used to.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
fairly recent thing. So that was interesting too, because that used to be one of the arguments about why they should be sold, because it was taking money away from districts in the form of
Yep,
property
yep.
taxes. But they're paying into those, and so there's really not a,
Through
not taking
through the
it.
rent and the investment of those dollars, they've been able to guarantee entities like public schools that state apportionment, which is $1 per student. That all school districts get, but we would hate to see those lands sold. And
Agree.
you know, you're just not gonna get $700,000 in return, you know, if those lands are sold. So,
Well, when he even suggested, the gentleman putting it on, that, you should never sell the land.
And I'm confused. Did you say David Welch did the land? Or
no,
he did
no,
the
David
TOC?
Welch is the Milford.
Okay,
He's
that's
a
what I-
TOs.
But he's,
TOs.
gotcha. Just got a wire across.
And the only thing I would say about Dave Welsh, in my previous district, I was on the legislative committee with Dave. He served on the NERCS legislative committee. Equalized districts aren't terribly fond of his plans because his plans take from equalization and give back to your big land districts. And so certainly he's about lowering the property tax requirements of all people, but generally it's your farmers and ranchers that benefit. Now, I will be honest, I haven't looked at, I think he had 2 plans that he provided
Yes.
last week, and I've not looked at those plans. But he was one of the architects around the Nebraska plan a year ago that got a little bit of attention at the legislature. It didn't really go very far. Jenna Hughes, the senator from Seward, was also involved in that, and they've kind of separated now. Senator Hughes's plan, that it's much different. Her legislative bill is much different than what the Nebraska plan was a year ago, or what Dave's plan is. But he knows TOSA inside and out. He's studied it for 20 years.
Yeah,
I think he's been on the board for 20 or 25 years, 30 years in board president.
I think he spends all his spare time working on TOs.
Yeah.
Cause
Kinda like Stuart.
Stuart, he had spreadsheets. You should have been there. You would have loved all the spreadsheets.
All the spreadsheets, yeah, there we go.
I mean, sir, for 2 different plans, for 2
Yeah,
plans.
for both those plans.
Yes,
Yes, okay. Anything else from the ESU workshop that anybody has?
The dinner was good.
Okay, and then any additional trainings, meetings, school visits, district events that anyone has attended that you wish to share about? We will talk later about the legislative
Yeah.
conference, so we'll save that for later.
I visited Madison Middle School on January 23rd. I had a great visit, saw a lot of things going on in the classrooms. In the science, sixth grade science, they were building shelters. They had to build a shelter. Both classes were doing this. It was interesting. They had like a little cup you have in the bathroom, plastic cup, and they had to make a shelter that would withstand a tsunami. And so they were working in groups of 2. And then what they were going to do, I should have come back. They were gonna put a little Lego man in it. And then they were gonna run the water over it and see if they held up. The kids were having a tough time trying to figure out how to paste the sticks on so it would even stand. And some of them were figuring it out. They needed to have braces around it and so forth, but the others, great idea. And they were all really involved in it. The teachers, both classes were walking around, looking at them. I also went into all the classrooms, but in the math classrooms and English classrooms, they're piloting those tablets. And there are little tablets that the teacher has kind of strapped. So both cases, they were female. So she would walk around, and as they talked, it connected to the smart board. And the kids were on their computers, and she would ask questions about, they were doing graphing. And then she could write on hers and it would show up there, and then you could see the kids figuring out on how much area that they were working on. And it allowed, what I thought was interesting, it allows the teacher to get up and move around through the kids instead of just being tied to her desk at the time. And I thought it was really impressive. And then music, they were learning notes, and they each had a little piano pad in front that they could put on the floor that made music. It had a little box, and the music came out of it, and they were playing these songs on it. Really good, very, very good visit. Good building and clean, Stuart. Miss Valley and I had a nice little discussion. I always enjoyed visiting Madison. And she told me she's working on getting some of those screens at the east end of the hallway I visited in the afternoon where that sun in the morning is a killer.
Yeah.
They're working on getting some money to get the screens there. Because as we walked down the hall, they said, "Oh, we're not here in the morning," because generally when I've been there, it's been in the morning, and that's really hit me in the face, but it's a great visit. Yeah, a lot of good things going.
Stuart and I went to Cody's school. And we went around, and I like to kind of sneak in the rooms from the kids, because I like to see them engaged. And we went into Linnell Stubbs' class, and she had on a long cape of a Viking hat with horns coming out. And I thought, now that is really cool. And those kids were just kind of mesmerized with it. I thought that was really fun. We went into Stevie Reed's class, and they were doing, it was kind of interesting because they were working with am, is, and are. And she would have sentence up on the board, well, on the screen. And she said, we blank went to the store. And so she would just ask the kids, and they had to tell her which word it was to put in there. That was fun. We went into one of the classes, and there was a little fellow that got a little upset. And the teacher told him to go sit in the calming corner. And I thought that was really cool, because they had little things you could pick up, and I told Stuart we should have had that at the beginning.
Maybe we do.
That's great. I loved how bright and open the windows, the light was coming in, Cody, that was great. And we did go into gym class. I thought they were playing jungle ball, but apparently they don't play the same kind of jungle ball when I was in school. They don't hit them in the face. Nothing like that, but the kids were having a great. So it was a good visit.
I had a meeting, so I am not able to attend the NASB board president's retreat, but I was actually able to catch up. Marcia happened to be traveling through North Platte last week, and so she and I had coffee and just did kind of a little impromptu training, and I asked a few questions, and she kind of went over, some of the things that may have been covered at that board president's retreat. And so that was really great. I got some ideas that we'll talk about here shortly under board protocols of just some things that I think we can do to just kind of improve board engagement and our function as a board. And I was super excited that worked out. It didn't cost us anything as a board except for me a cup of coffee. So that was extra awesome. But yeah, that was really nice. And then this morning, not much to report on, but I was on the senator's legislative call this morning as well, and I think it was like 12 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
Pretty short and sweet. Not a lot discussed this morning that was related to schools or anything like that. A lot of cryptocurrency conversations. So I would imagine in the next few weeks there might be some more on there that would pertain to us. Anybody else have anything under board engagement? Okay. This is not a standing agenda item, but just something that I wanted placed on here for tonight. Just because I wanted to, since we do have a new board member, and there's a couple things that we're gonna kind of change up just slightly for next month's meeting. So I wanted to make sure we took time to talk about it tonight. So the first thing that we're gonna talk about is just kind of the flow of our meetings. So obviously we do use Robert's rules as a guide. We do not strictly follow Robert's rules, but we do use it for a guide. And so some things under there that may not just be routine that people know is we do have a consent agenda, obviously, where we can kind of lump approve things under one motion. If anybody ever has a question about an item on consent agenda, we can discuss that just as it stands as consent agenda. And then if you ever feel the need to where you need to vote on something separately, or it needs discussed more, acted on separately, you can remove that from consent agenda.
So we can talk about something on the consent agenda without pulling it off.
Yes, we can discuss that. It's kind of, I think there's been confusion on that, but we can discuss that if it needs to be a lengthy discussion or acted on outside of that one vote, then we need to remove it, and it can move down to, I think we can move it either to an action or a discussion
Yeah, you
item.
can put it where.
And at that point, then it could be amended, tabled, whatever we wish to do. So, that's how that process works. As far as, our action items, we've kind of been doing things a little bit backwards, actually, and I didn't really realize this until I really started watching a lot of other meetings, and I was talking with Marcia, and she was like, wait, what? So with action items, I'm gonna request as president that when we start our discussion and we introduce an item, we actually need to have a motion on the table prior to starting our discussion. Yes, that way our discussion is with intent of discussing that motion that's on the table. And so we'll make the introduction, I'll call for a motion. Generally, we will have one, then we'll have a second, and then we'll open that up for discussion. And at that point, if while we are discussing something, if anybody wants to make an amendment, you would do so before we call it to question to vote. And so then you would make a motion for an amendment. Somebody would have to second that. I would call to question and to discuss the amendment. I would call to question so that we vote on the amendment. The amendment passes, then that action item is done. If it doesn't, then we go back to the original motion on the table and we could discuss that. All that to question. So I just wanted to make sure, since we are kind of flip-flopping that, I didn't want to just spring that on everybody next month, because I think it will take a little bit of getting used to. But my hope is that, that will facilitate a little bit more intentional conversation about the motions on the table. And hopefully facilitate everybody feeling like they have an opportunity to discuss that. Then when discussion wanes, we will call to questions.
So it takes a motion and a second, then discussion.
Yes,
That is
And
actually
then-
the
yes.
way to do it, yes.
Yep.
it is.
And then once discussion has either fizzled out or everybody's had a couple of opportunities to
There's
speak.
something called service.
Yep, then we call to question and then we go to it. Yep, absolutely. So very subtle change. I mean, we already are discussing those things, but we're just kind of gonna flip flop that order. Then the other things that I just wanted to make sure, since we have a new board member, that we just kind of talk about the expectations of board members. Obviously, board meetings, being prepared, having read, attachments, those types of things. We will be starting policy review again here soon. And so when we get to that, making sure that I'm so excited. Making sure that you've had an opportunity to review those prior to the meeting. Additional responsibilities that we ask of board members are, we are in a rotation to after our official board meetings. Not our committee of the whole, but our regular board meetings, there we go. We are on a rotation, there we go on the radio. It's a pretty short and sweet little thing, but we do that, and then we are on a rotation as well for claims audit. So you'll do 2 months in a row, 2 separate times of the year. And then, I think the only other thing I made note of, just so that everybody knows, is that we generally do all try to be at commencement, to hand out diplomas, so that would be another thing to mark your calendar. Is there anything else I'm forgetting that board members should
Only visit school
visit with? Yes.
if we can.
Yes. Yes, we definitely want to try to get into schools as much as we can. Whether that's a quick visit, there have been times where, for instance, I visited Madison Middle School one time where I was judging their door decorating contest. Things like that are great, or you can schedule a formal visit.
I do have a question on that. I have been a little bit discouraged on making those just because do I have to go through you to make those visits, or can I just?
If you want somebody from teaching and learning or any
Okay.
of the directors.
Okay, so if I'm going with like a, I mean, you guys always answer. my
If
questions.
you want to visit a building, I would just suggest call the administrative assistant to make sure that the building principal.
Right.
knows to be there, but no.
Sometimes I'm always worried about 3 or 4 different schedules matching up and.
Yeah.
I would send them a note with times I could do.
Oh, yeah.
You have it like 4 or 5 different days and times,
Mhm.
send it to them, and then you'll get a response.
To,
Oh, yeah.
to the building principal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
when I've
To the
done that with the
building
principals before, it's been fine, but I know Brandon and I have been trying to meet with Vicky and with Lindsay to get a meeting going, and then Lindsay couldn't make one, and, no big deal, but
I think you're.
because my questions were always answered, like, I don't want to put you like I'm not doing that,
It's
but
terribly difficult to coordinate calendars. It seems
Yeah.
more so now than it was even a year ago or 2 years ago. Now, I would say on behalf of the cabinet, we are more than willing, obviously, to be on those building visits
Yeah.
with you if you want to see something specifically. So we are always, we will do our best to try and make ourselves available, but you're right, it's hard to.
okay,
Especially when we're doing some different things with check-ins at buildings, so that's, when you look at a weekly calendar for teaching and learning, myself, communications, HR, I mean, we're probably out of buildings more than we've ever been before, so as we should be, as we should.
great,
I never passed that, Steve, that's okay.
makes sense.
Great. Perfect. Thank you for asking that. That was a good.
Was it covered?
Okay. All right, moving on. If nobody else has anything else to add or questions there. Okay. Public comments. Public questions and comments may take place at this time in the agenda. Individuals who want to address the board must complete a guidelines for public comments form with the date, topic addressing, name, address, and the name of any organization you represent. Give it to the board clerk prior to the meeting.
Happen.
All right. And then moving on to our strategic plan presentation. So I'm going to turn this time over to Dr. Rhodes initially, and then to our directors to share our strategic plan.
Okay, so there are two documents, PDF documents attached to this agenda item. One is the actual draft strategic plan for 25 to 30. And then the other one is a PDF of the presentation for this evening. Now, some of this presentation we've provided before as we've tried to keep the board updated as we've gone through this process. So I believe Brandon is sharing his screen right now. And of course, both these documents are for public view. We will also be putting both these documents on our website as we kind of go through this process as well. So yeah, I think as Emily said, I think this is really, really an exciting time. I think this plan is extremely exciting. You know, for me, I think for the district, I think it aligns a lot of what we're already doing, but I think the focus around our three strategies and the action steps involved that you're going to hear a little bit more about tonight from our directors. It's just really, really important if we want to do the very best we can for the kids across our school district. So to remind you a little bit on this process, so on June 13th and 14th, we had first met with the strategic planning committee. Thank you to Emily and Joanne. They served on that committee as board members. Now that was a committee of about 30 to 31 folks that initially met. You'll notice from the list that is provided in this presentation, you'll notice that it does have a very strong internal flavor to it. But having said that, I think we had invited between 15 and 20 external stakeholders to serve on this committee as well. And we started that process about a month before. We actually started to invite people in May. But if you remember, that time of the year is Nebraska Days. And so, you know, a lot of people have other commitments. You will notice as we go through and our directors talk about their particular action teams, we have really, really good parent involvement on those action teams. We did have people from the business world as well. We have Mid Plains, Dr. Tomanek was involved. We had people from Great Plains as well. But then the other thing I would say about this committee is even though very much internal, some of those people are parents. They have spouses that are business people in our community as well. So I did ask those folks to try and come with a perspective outside of being an internal stakeholder when we met. So we met on the 13th and 14th. And when we met on the 13th and 14th, this image that is up on the screen now, this was really the work of that strategic planning committee, the development of beliefs, the development of parameters, the mission statement, and then our objectives that we'll talk about in a little bit. And then lastly, the three big strategies that we'll work on for the next 5 years. After that, we identified people to invite to our action teams. And one of the things that we did that some districts do, some districts go a little different route. We utilized our directors as action team leaders. And so they went through a training process with Dr. Sam Mills and Dr. Triple. So they became trained as an action team leader to work with their action teams that actually met 6 times per semester. To really develop, they did a lot of research. They shared that research. They talked about their actual strategy and what it meant and what it didn't mean. So there was really some great conversations and discussions that took place at that time. So a big thank you to Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Carlson, Mrs. Douglas, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Mills, and Mrs. Busher. They were our action team leaders, devoted, you know, time outside of their normal workday to prepare and get ready for these meetings. And then Mr. Simpson and I simply served as supports, and we moved around on those evenings. So we got in with each action team. Usually there were questions asked of us that were more kind of system-based. Some were financially related when Mr. Simpson was involved as well. So after that, those three strategies, specific role results were developed for each one of those. And under each specific result are action steps on how you're going to meet that specific result. So it really is strategic. It really is a roadmap to be able to achieve that particular strategy. That then was provided on January 3rd to the strategic planning committee that came back together. And at that point, the strategic planning committee could change and edit, wordsmith anything that had already had been developed, except for the three strategies. We couldn't touch the three strategies, but, and please jump in, any cabinet or Emily. There was still a lot of wordsmithing that was done on January 3rd on belief statements. We spent a lot of time going back through beliefs. Not so much the parameters, but a lot on beliefs, and did a lot of editing. And then at the end of the day, basically, we have presentations from those three action teams and their strategies, specific results, and action steps. And then it's up to that planning committee to say, yay, nay, throw it out, or edit those action steps and those specific results. And we did a lot of wordsmithing around that as well. And so that brings us to tonight to present to the Board of Education. The next step would be to bring this strategic plan to the board for approval in February. And then after that, the cabinet will start to put an implementation schedule together. And you'll notice that in the document. You'll see an implementation schedule over 5 years for each one of our specific results that are identified for our strategies. And the thing I would remind you, remember, it's a 5-year plan. So we're not going to attack everything in year one. We actually did hold the strategic planning committee on what the group felt were the main priorities or where we could start. And I think as a cabinet, we've had some discussions about that, and we will agree where we probably are going to start. But if this is approved in February, then the cabinet will start to work on the implementation schedule for it. And then we will bring that to the board so that you know kind of what we're looking at for 25, 26, 26, 27, and so on and so forth as we go through. And then it's up to us to make sure that we are implementing and taking those action steps and being able to show how we're making progress for each one of those strategies. So, our beliefs, again, I don't think this is for your consumption. You can take a look at it. We've presented some of this information before. I think tonight is really to give our cabinet, our directors a chance to provide their part in terms of their strategies as we go through. But I really want to thank them. I want to thank the people that were on the strategic planning committee, because that was a 3-day commitment from those folks. And then certainly our action teams that we had, 55 to 60 people that served, and 6 meetings throughout the fall, early part of the winter. That's quite a commitment. Yeah. And so, those were 2-hour meetings a lot of times. They were pretty intense. Not everybody agreed. So there was a lot of consensus building that had to take place at those times as well. So, Mr. Peterson, if you want to kind of scroll to strategy 1 on page 12. And with that, Mrs. Douglas and Mrs. Carlson, we'll turn it over to you.
So Vicki and I facilitated strategy 1, which is we will increase academic success of students and efficacy in staff. You can see our team members that are listed there. We have administrators and teachers, as well as Dr. Jody Timonik and Laura Trzynski, who are community members and parent representatives. And they really were from all levels of the school system as well, and various buildings. So our strategy really is about student academic success and empowering staff. It has a direct relation to that building efficacy and the belief in the work that teachers do day in and day out. The growth of the whole child and focusing on individual success and growth of each student, both socially and emotionally. A big piece of it is collaboration among staff members, the confidence and competence of all staff to make a difference and to learn and grow from each other. Kind of the notion that no one is as smart as everyone in the room collectively. So, that was a big piece of it. It's not about compliance or a checklist. It's more about building a culture of learning. Not about one person or one group of people, not just about grades, but about individual growth of all students, working together, not about working in silos, it's working together. And then, not about adding more to the plates of our educators. It's really about, this is the work that we do. This is our profession, and we are proud to be educators. And then it's also not a one size fits all model. Each student is unique, and what we do for one student may work differently for another one.
As Dr. Rhodes indicated, then we facilitated our action team to lean into designing research questions around what the strategy is and what it is not, right? So we needed to be able to define specifically how we were going to go about researching for that strategy so that that could lend us some insight into what our action steps then needed to be. So our team came up, the whole entire action team came up with these questions. What is efficacy and the effect size of teacher efficacy on student learning? Efficacy being defined as a teacher's belief that a child can learn. What is the baseline data for our academic success? So what were all the data sets that we were going to utilize to determine what our current reality is in terms of student achievement and how we were going to be able to move that needle, and what were some of those action steps and things that we needed to research to see what were our current practices that were being effective. Were there other practices that we could potentially implement to help move the needle of student success? It was very important to the action team to really evaluate student growth as a whole. Yes, we needed to define academic success, but we sometimes know that there are other things that impede academic success in students coming from a trauma situation. And what were some of those other cultural forces that we needed to research and understand in order to maybe address things that were non-academic for students, why students were maybe not achieving academically. We also wanted to do some research around how teachers can recognize and address those learning gaps in the classroom. Again, what were those data sets? What were the various components of systems that we have in place that would help them sort of identify what students were able to do and what was maybe potentially impeding their learning. Additional research questions were, what strategies do high achieving districts implement to improve student academic success? So not that you can, compare every district to one another, but we wanted to consider if there are districts out there that are achieving at high success rates, and we can identify demographically that our makeup of our school district is parallel or similar to them. Are they doing things that maybe we aren't currently implementing that we could lean into or glean off of? And what were the things that we were doing similarly that were successful to those successful districts? There was some talk around incentives and reprimands. Do those things affect teacher efficacy? So they really wanted to dig into how do we build a culture for teachers to feel as though they are supported in what they're doing day in and day out? And are there things that can positively or negatively influence their job performance essentially? And finally, what does an effective PLC look like, and how does implementing that collaborative professional development impact teacher efficacy and student academic outcomes? A lot of the research that we found was that highly effective professional learning communities is when teachers are learning from one another and problem solving and triaging around students together. And that's very important in the movement of one of our action or our specific results that you'll see here shortly.
So as a result of that research, here are the two specific results that our team developed. The first one is to strengthen our professional learning communities framework to improve academic achievement for students and professional efficacy for staff. That built a lot on the research that Vicki just talked about. And then the second specific result was to cultivate an inclusive instructional environment that supports the learning of all students and staff. So our action steps then, so what we would do in order to meet those specific results. So We want to focus a lot of work on our strengthening those professional learning communities, those PLCs that we have really started implementing this school year, but we know are important and want to continue that work. And that's really focused on those 4 questions of what should students know and be able to do? How are we going to know that they've learned that? What are we going to do when students struggle? And then how will we respond to the exam? Another action step is to regularly review formative and summative assessment data in our PLC meetings to track progress and then use that data to really refine our teaching practices and positively impact student engagement. Another one is to establish high expectations and clear goals for student achievement by prioritizing our essential standards within our guaranteed and viable curriculum. We've started that work this semester as well to really define within each grade level or content area band, which standards we're going to really guarantee and make sure that every students know, or that all students know at that particular grade level. Not that we're not going to teach everything else, but what are we going to make sure we prioritize? Then furthermore, we'll maximize the use of the district adopted high quality instructional materials that we adopt and you guys support. Train staff on interpreting and applying data to guide our instructional decisions. Design building level schedules and academic calendars that support that PLC work. Facilitate peer teacher observations to observe each other's classrooms and learn from each other. And then how we're going to evaluate these action steps each year is we're going to look at our student academic performance data annually, and then our professional growth and efficacy data.
For our action plan 1.2, for our second specific result of cultivate an inclusive instructional environment that supports the learning of all students and staff, we wanted to make sure that we were focusing on implementing opportunities for students to provide feedback regarding their own personal and academic growth. We know that's one of the highest effect sizes on student learning is when students take onus and ownership in their learning and have an opportunity to provide feedback to their teachers about how things are going for them. We also felt it was very important. This was a really neat thing that kind of just organically evolved was with our external individuals that participated on our action team. They really wanted to support student learning. And so how can we do that? How can we engage and activate families to become a part of their students' success? And what are some of the ways that we can actually get more families into our school systems and have an understanding of their child's learning beyond parent-teacher conferences? Topics might include like evenings on literacy and math and behavior, college and career readiness, and providing those opportunities to engage families. We also want to focus on building stronger parent-guardian partnerships that contribute to their learning. We have a lot of examples like room parents and volunteers in the classroom, but we want to enhance and expand on that. Additionally, part of our action plan for this is to evaluate and refine the implementation of some of the current systems that we already have in place as a district, and are we implementing those with fidelity? So our Boys Town model, our MTSS frameworks model, are we utilizing those systems that we've constructed over the past couple of years to really enhance a safe and orderly school environment so kids feel safe at school and they feel supported in building relationships? We also want to take a look at how we are refining and strengthening our alternative education and extended learning opportunities to meet the needs of students that maybe traditional school setting doesn't necessarily fit. It was also important to our action team to recognize and celebrate academic achievements of students, both individually and groups. And you can see, I think, probably through some of our social media outlets, our schools and our building administrators are already engaging in some of that. And also to provide ongoing professional development to build capacity and staff to meet the needs of all students. You've heard Mrs. Johnson and I speak about SPED strategies, for example, and really providing intentional professional development that is directly connected to the specific results that are within our action plan. And the last couple of ones are facilitate peer teacher observations to observe one another. This was a very strong there was a very strong sense from the teachers on our action team that it's great for them to get into one another's classrooms to see what's working for them and what may not be working when they're maybe struggling with a specific student or maybe a unit of study. And then to be able to provide feedback to one another, to support one another in their professional growth. And then as Lindsay indicated, there's two different ways that we're gonna ongoingly evaluate the success of that specific result. Is to look at our performance data and then allow staff the opportunity to assess their professional growth and their own efficacy in their job performance.
So before we go to strategy two, I know that's a lot. Any initial, I mean, you might have questions, and I don't know if we can answer all of your questions, right away tonight, but do you have comments, questions, or anything in terms of what you're seeing with strategy one?
Well, I love the fact that the teachers are collaborating with each other and being able to go into each other's classrooms and stuff, because in what I do, that's how I learn, is being able to go into something just like what I do. People who understand what I do, what I'm trying to do, and, oh, I like how you did that. Okay, I can implement that. So I think that's great. That's fantastic.
I can tell a lot of work went into this, and a lot of thought, looking at it from an educator's perspective. Makes a lot of sense. Actually, 30 years ago, we did that. We did do that. I would think it was 30 years ago. We did.
Your observation?
Yes, we did. Joanne Stevens was associate principal at the high school and thought that was a really good thing to do. And it worked really well.
We have it incorporated into our teacher mentor program. But then, we kind of stopped there. So the teachers were like, well, why aren't we all doing
Yeah.
that? And so it was really neat to organically see them make that
Glad to see
realization.
that.
Yeah.
When will this get all rolled out to the teachers? After we, well, it's not, they need to understand it's not all gonna be like drinking out of a fire hose. I mean, you already explained that, but that they will, not the ones that were on the committee, but those that probably don't have an idea this has been going on, which there are a lot, I can tell you that from experience. So will it come out in waves?
Well, of course, we've got to get it formally approved.
Yeah, well, that's what I heard. I know we have to approve, so we approved this in February. Will it slowly start coming out?
Yep, absolutely. Again, like I said, this is gonna start to go out on the website. And then we'll do some social media with it as well, because we really want all of our stakeholders to kind of be engaged with what we're going to do with our strategic plan. I don't want to overwhelm people or get them excited, because when you look at, I mean, that was just one strategy. And we've got two more to present, and if I'm an internal stakeholder or external for that matter, I'm gonna look at that and say, how in the heck am I gonna get that done in 5 years? So I think we want to make it clear that this will be implemented in stages and then in steps. We're not gonna, quite honestly, you're gonna hear about strategy 2 in just a little bit, but we're looking at one of the specific results, 1.1 and 2.1 as being implemented for 25-26. We don't want to do all and do it poorly. We want to do a few things, get it done right, and then move on. And it's a strategic plan that's a 5-year plan. It isn't anything that really could be, you couldn't accomplish everything in 1 year. So yes, and most likely we'll do that through our building level PLCs is how we'll communicate that out. Each one of the cabinet members is a partner with a building. And so we try as best we can to attend their PLC times on Wednesday afternoons. And so most likely it'll be one of us that presents that at the building level on the principal. That's right.
I had done that and I really enjoyed getting to serve on this committee that helped put this together, because we were very intentional with the words that were used. Like, we spent a lot of time over like one word, like, is this the right word? Which kind of seems silly, but really, like, it matters, yes. And so it's really cool to see it all come together. But as I went home after that last time that we were all together, I was specifically thinking about here in this 1.2, action step number 2 about inviting families to engage in learning opportunities.
Yeah.
Because I hear so often, especially my generation of people, I grew up with letter people and we did math a lot different. And the parents that are my age are like, I have no idea how to help my kid on their math homework. I have no idea why they're learning reading this way. And so as I was thinking through all of those comments that I've heard, I was like, that is honestly a really great opportunity to not only explain to them, this is why we do this, this is the science, the data that supports that, but also enable them to help their children develop those skills at home. So I was excited about the opportunities that might come up with that.
Hey, strategy 2.
Okay. Strategy 2, I would start with saying, for me, it's personally an awesome experience to be involved in this. I've worked for several districts, but I've always missed the strategy or the strategic plan. So just being involved in this process, I think is a great honor, and all the work that is done, that we look and we wordsmith every word in this entire document. And unless you were part of that, you don't realize the work that's done. So we really want to thank our team. Brandon and I had a fantastic team, and you can see them listed up there. Our strategy 2 will maximize current staff skills and expertise while being resourceful and innovative in recruiting new staff. So that fits right everything that we're doing with recruiting, retaining, and what is it all about? The big part of this is we want to continue to obviously retain staff. We've got to look at different ways to retain them. Look at their skills. Is there a teacher that has a different certification? We can put them in a different spot. Just getting creative with recruiting. There's no bad ideas right now of everything that we're doing. Embracing that change. We really want to look at a lot of leadership development too. That's a big piece that we need to do with our principals. Mentorship, continue to grow with that, as has been alluded to. I think you'll see too, board members, how some of these go back and forth between all 3 strategies. Kind of see that theme, which we absolutely love. That's what we want. So PLC is there. Staff mental health came up a lot. It's all about that positivity, being community minded, and then of course, team building. What it's not about, we don't want to settle for warm bodies. We want the best and the brightest teachers that we can hire. We also want to use outside agencies as needed to help us to hire. We don't want to continue to do what we've always done. That's one of the worst things that say, well, that's how we've always done it. Or to settle, or to have that flat character, or be redundant. We don't want to be about negativity or stagnation or outsourcing or single-minded or have that desperation. So we're about moving forward with strategy 2. So the research questions, this was very exciting because this was a lot of work, and Dr. Rose alluded to this. This team, all these teams did a lot of work with these questions because they had to come up with the questions and then research them. So I'm going to bird walk for 1 second. I'll get right back to this. From that process, I just want to report to you guys, and I've talked to Dr. Rose about this. From the questions and the research, one of our team members contacted Midlands University through looking at a different pair program. So this strategy actually has already taken place. I had a Zoom call with Midlands today, so we're looking at a whole nother program for pairs. So I can't thank them enough for what they did, because that came from one of our team members. So they came up fantastic questions. What are the factors, positive and negative, that influence the retention? What is the trickle down effect on students? That means one of our members said, what happens to kids when you have a different teacher each year in that classroom? So that's that trickle down effect that they were talking about. What do other districts offer retention? We look at that all the time. What are the most effective strategies for recruiting high quality staff? That's a great question. How can we incentivize current staff for recovering unfilled vacancies, showing potential for growth and commitment to the district? So again, we're doing some of those things last year where we did some of those longevity things, but we want to look at more ideas to help incentivize staff, because we have staff doing a lot of different things every day. Continue with our questions. What are other districts offering paraeducators for pay, insurance? So we did a lot of research on that already, so we have a lot of data on that. Are they able to retain their pairs? If so, what incentives are other districts doing? How can we enhance educational opportunities for all staff, particularly expanding the pair to teacher program? and collaborating college support teachers pursuing their master's degree. So another thing that we want to look at down the road is maybe having a connection with the university, that I have a teacher that has a bachelor's degree, we want them to maybe teach in a different subject. How do we work with them to be able to get that endorsement and obviously the funding to pay for those classes as well? And then we really want to look at how do urban and rural staffs differ in recruitment strategy, and what challenges do they face? They could be a lot different. And one more page of questions. What are innovative ways we can capitalize on growing our high school student intern program participants to come back to our district? So again, that's going to be a major focus of getting those high school kids and getting them into education and future teachers. What are the student intern numbers interested in education? What motivators are used to encourage educators? And what are the unique challenges, recruitment, retention, and special education? That'll bring us up to the specific results, which, any questions about that part, or turn over to Brandon?
So our group, they were troopers, and we just had all of these questions, all these ideas, each one on their own sticky note. And Mr. Simpson can attest to this because he kind of got volunteered to help our group. As we were taking all these ideas and trying to sort them out into different groups. And you don't really know like how the direction of that's gonna go until you start seeing it visually. So they were all over the wall on the side, some of them were falling down, and finally we get everything put up there. And we were able to say, you know what, although there's all these ideas and we have all these questions and answers that we came up for, they're actually come down to kind of these two strategies that we could use. So we have 2.1, which is to maximize retention of high quality personnel. And 2.2 is to maximize recruitment opportunities. So like what Mr. Mills was saying, bringing people in and keeping great people there. Or it could be the other way, which came first, the chicken or the egg. That's our two strategies. So for 2.1, our action plan is to maximize retention of high quality personnel. And the ideas that our group came with, like Mr. Mills saying, reaching out to different school districts, reaching out to colleges. We had people from Mid-Plains who were on our group also, and that was a huge event to get their input on these. But one thing that they found out was a huge part is building community and culture at the district and building level through a variety of activities. And so like whether it might be having a similar interest survey, seeing what other teachers share those common interests with you, to make those connections with your coworkers, to give you a reason, another reason to be excited to stay in North Platte and to keep teaching with us. To seek teacher input to inform future professional development that maximizes staff skills and expertise. To expand the state survey, so we all hear like when people leave a profession, what's the reasons why you left? Well, Mr. Mills does things with the stay survey throughout the year. Like, why are you staying? Which is a great thing. So what are some ways we can continue to evolve that and to find out what's working, what are we doing well that they're excited to stay here for? To strengthen the mentorship programs for paraeducators, for teachers and administrators. So that way you can have someone to help kind of guide your professional practice and your personal growth. Moving right along to continuing here, provide pathways for leadership and advancement. So we talk about leadership academies and those opportunities to help teachers improve and to grow in their skills. Evaluate and refine current practices for onboarding and induction activities for certified and classified staff. I remember my very first year coming to North Platte Public Schools, and you're sitting in this room and you just get all of this paperwork and like, holy cow. But it's changed so much just since those times where you kind of baby step, movie What About Bob, baby step your way to the end of the hallway, baby step your way. And so you get information in much smaller, less intense chunks to where you can feel like it's a lot more manageable. Explore flexible work arrangements that support staff well-being and work-life balance. So things like that. We kind of do a little bit now, like with the floating day, like do you want to have the day before Christmas break off or at the end of Christmas break off to give those flexibility? That kind of work with people's lifestyles. And then to wrap up 2.1, provide professional learning for building and growing culture in schools for leaders, and annually utilize staff retention and climate data to evaluate staff retention success. So that's 2.1. 2.2, like we said, maximize recruitment opportunities. And Mr. Mills sent some pictures. They just made it on social media today from his last visit. And every time you see, he's like, Kevin has never walked into a place where it's not just instantly making connections with somebody. Like you just know him for life after you meet him. So create an ad hoc committee to assess current recruitment strategies and generative innovative ideas to attract top talent. So one idea that people came up with is like referral incentives. Get a job with North Platte Public Schools and tell them I sent you, you know, kind of like what you see with cable TV and things like that. But, you know, if you entice somebody to come to the school and you already have that connection, then they're more likely to stay there because they know they have some family, friends, and community connections there. Enhance the collaboration between the departments of human resources and communications. So Kevin and myself to boost the North Platte Public Schools brand with targeted recruiting and promotional materials. There's nothing cooler to make than blue and gold content for North Platte Public Schools. Cultivate relationships with institutions of higher learning to increase partnerships and grow staff through recruitment and training opportunities. To enhance educational pathways that encourage North Platte High School students to pursue careers in education. And we have these examples of like future teachers clubs, reaching out to other schools. And as you all know, talking to board members and representatives from other school districts, it's a statewide and really a countrywide problem to find teachers. And especially in places that are kind of, not say more isolated, but you know, you don't have the college right in town that offers those students to us for a pipeline. So what can we do? Well, we could try to identify those people earlier when they're in high school. They want to be a teacher and start planting the seed now. Not only is it awesome to be a teacher, how awesome would it be to be a co-teacher with us, you know, to get them excited about that. To investigate and implement innovative methods to promote and market North Platte Public Schools as a destination school district. To broaden and strengthen opportunities and grow your own program. So we've been having some good success with that. It's been a great addition to our district. Provide professional learning on recruiting practices in schools for leaders. To annually utilize staff vacancy and application data to evaluate recruitment success and to inform future strategies.
Comments over strategy 2, specific results or action steps?
I think it's really good that we are focusing on recruitment and retention. Specifically because, as you talked about, the shortage that there is of teachers and the remoteness, even though we are, you know, a Class A school, we are the furthest west, and a lot of people think get beyond 144th in Omaha, you're leaving the state. So I really think this is really good. I really do. Again, a lot of work, a lot of thought, but a lot of great results. I'm certain the next one will too. But I'm really impressed with it.
Strategy 3.
All right, so Erica Johnson and I had strategy 3, and that is we will embrace and capitalize on the growth and change within our district and community. And our group was amazing, and we really did have a lot of diversity in our group as far as we had principals, we had athletic director, Tracy Foster, who's in charge of our internship program. Megan Daly, who's in our sixpence. We had that early childhood representative there. Kelly Sheets, who was in our EL program. Counselor, community members, Judy Peterson, Shay Caldwell, a parent representative, and Tara, and then Maria Rodriguez is a student who graduated 4 years ago. So kind of a young person in our community who also graduated from the class. So it was a nice group of people that were very collaborative.
I just enjoy the process, so we all know what's coming next. So because when you get together as a group, I think sometimes like if you don't have that agenda laid out or you don't know what's next, some of you are probably like me, it makes you anxious. And so it's just really nice how it all flowed together. So the first thing we did is we dug in about, okay, what is the strategy about? Like, not what it's not, but like, what are we focusing on? What questions are we gonna have to come up with? And so we kind of did that first, which I think is always good. Like, it's about change, like change is gonna happen. It's about being proactive and prepared. And one of my favorites, which a lot of you know, is all means all. So it's about each and every student, not just about this group of students or that group of students, but it's about each one individually. And just coming in open-minded and finding solutions. So we're moving forward, which is exciting.
So it's not about pretty much the opposite of everything that I just told you, but we don't want to be reactive. We know that our student population is going to change. And so being prepared, but not being reactive, we don't want to panic. We don't want to single people out. We really don't want to segregate student populations. We don't want to wait around for solutions, and we don't want to live in the past. We're ready to jump forward and be ready for what's next.
So like what our strategy is about, Brandy and I also like to be prepared. So when you are facilitating, we like to have questions in mind so we can just kind of create that conversation to start it. And it was kind of interesting because once we did that, the questions just came. So we have 3 slides of questions, and then they started putting questions underneath questions.
Yeah.
And we had to like really move on. We could have spent, I don't even know how long, just with questions. So really, when you read all the questions, it's, I kind of lumped them into 3 kind of big rocks. One of them is like the concrete data. So like the actual number data of like how many students, like just the real data, you can put a number. And then another category is like the best practices and the strategies of what we're currently doing, like we're already doing, and what is that research? Like, what is the best strategies? And then kind of the third is reaching out to other schools with kind of our same demographics and finding out what they're doing, like what didn't work for them and what is working for them. So when you look through those 3 slides, that's kind of the 3 themes that you're gonna see.
I think we also really wanted to focus on what is in our community for any newcomer. It doesn't matter where you're from, but like what resources are in the community already. Sometimes we sit there and say, we don't have that. We're not ready. And I think when we dug into that, we're like, there are some good resources in our community for families and newcomers, finding out what we have, and then what we don't have. Those are a big part of that too. So.
We're finding the people who already have that information. So that was kind of intriguing too, like, oh yeah, that's who we would go to within the community or go to within our school buildings.
So the specific results for strategy 3 were 3.1, maximize community partnerships to provide increased opportunities for students. And 3.2, implement inclusive practices to reflect the cultural and diverse needs of our district and community. So our action plan for that was collaborate with North Platte Area Chamber of Development and the North Platte Public Schools Foundation to identify possible partnerships between community and businesses. A lot like action plan 1.2, bringing families in, we identified that during COVID, we just shut everyone out because we had to, and we've never really let people back in, and we want people back in our buildings. We want the community, we want our partners back into the buildings, and so that was a big part of that. We also decided that we need to create a guide for what does that look like, because although we want everybody to come in, we have to be really careful. These are our children, we want to protect them, we want to make sure as we're letting people into our schools and we're working with communities, we have a good guide for what that'll look like. We want to talk to our schools about what are your needs, what do you need in your building specific, and how do we help you make sure that through partnerships we can support that. We also talked a lot about integrating career, college, and life readiness skills into our pre-K to 12 programs that align with our community organizations. So reaching out to some of those groups and asking them, what skills are you looking for when you're hiring someone? What exactly do you need? And how can we help get kids ready for that skill? So, and then pipeline programs. We worked a lot talking about how do we make sure that we have pathways for kids, partnering with businesses, again, kind of like what we talked about before, but our job shadowing, career internships, ensuring that all of our students are college and career ready by expanding those opportunities. And then we really talked about partnering with higher education institutions, even going far as like national businesses and associations, and then working with our nonprofit groups as well. And then 3.1 continues is fostering mutually beneficial partnerships between elementary, middle, and high school to support shared initiatives. So making sure that our different levels have good communication and we're working together as one school district and not saying, well, we do this at elementary, but we do something different at middle school. In partnerships with our stakeholders, determine the measurement to analyze the effectiveness of this action plan. So working with all stakeholders to evaluate, is this working? Do you feel like you have involvement in the school? Do you feel like you're a partner with us?
Right, so action plan 3.2 is the implementation of inclusive practices to reflect the cultural and diverse needs of our districts and our community. So we're going to conduct an assessment first, just to identify those unique needs of our families and the gaps in services that we may have. Then we'll expand and enhance resources offered at the Welcome Center here at the district level, but also within our individual schools. And then we'll partner with local organizations and agencies to expand those resources and services that are available to our families. And then create a network to connect families with and celebrate create the network and connect the families into additional support systems within the community that they might not know about. We'll develop and expand materials and resources and provide them information in commonly spoken languages within North Platte Public Schools and our community. Offer parent and guardian workshops, just making those connections within our families, just on topics that also pertain to them and our unique needs, which goes back to that assessment survey that we want to do at the very beginning of this one. Implement ongoing training for teachers, administrators, and staff. And then plan and promote buildings and district events that highlight and celebrate our culture within our community. So we're celebrating everyone's unique and individual needs. And then we'll continuously evaluate our English learner program here at the district to maximize the effectiveness. Evaluate building and district events as they are planned to ensure accessibility to everyone. And then also we'll develop an evaluation tool to determine the success of our plan.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Strategy here.
Thank you all very much for, this is a lot of work. And I can see why you're gonna do it to the teachers just in staff, because they would.
It probably would not help our retention. With strategy 2 might be. So as Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Busher were presenting it, it reminded me a little bit, going back to building site plans, going back to some of the different types of professional development that we're doing with our administrators on a weekly basis. our professional learning communities and certainly the strategic plan, it reminds me of something I heard long ago. And you can either be a school system or you can be a system of schools. And so for a lot of rural schools in the state of Nebraska, they're a school system just by nature because they're one building system. So the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. And in a district our size, we've had a little bit of gap as it relates to elementary to middle to high school, and quite honestly, sometimes gaps between elementary buildings as well. So I think when we think about what we're trying to accomplish, I think overall, to increase the opportunities for student success and student achievement, whether we're talking about a strategic plan or whether we're talking about the concept of a professional learning community, or taking ownership as a building, that these are my goals as a building and being an internal stakeholder in that building. I think that leads into a school system and a strong school system, and moving away from this idea of system. Yeah, you have 11 buildings, so you're a system of schools, no, we're a school system. And we're consistent and we're all moving in the same direction. So, and I do concur, Cindy, a lot of work when you think about 3 days that one group spent, and then 14 to 16 hours that people spent throughout the fall to develop the research and the specific results, and then the action steps. Everybody had an assignment when they left on Wednesday evening as it related to research. So when you see the names of the groups of the action planning teams, they left after the second Wednesday with assignments. They had research questions that they researched on their own. And I think Mr. Mills is right. We've already gained some great ideas from the research questions. So Emily said earlier that this is exciting. I agree wholeheartedly that it's exciting. You know, this last slide is kind of what we just talked about earlier. We're going to ask for board approval in February. We're going to start to work on the implementation schedule, and then it's up to us at the district level to implement out there and to really pay close attention to your action steps. And I don't know if you picked this up or not, but at the end of every specific result, those action steps were the evaluation. So there is that evaluation piece at the end of each one of those that generally, and I think it was Mrs. Douglas that talked about it during Strategy 1 presentation, that we're doing annually. Those are annual evaluations that we will do if we've implemented that specific result. Okay. Any last comments?
Great work.
Questions?
Thank you guys for work. Emily, you too. And
It
Joanne.
was hard, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. My brain was tired at the end.
Yes.
That's for sure. Yes. And I did want to add to that, we had a discussion about, and I feel strongly as a board that we are a partner in this strategic plan. When we implement a strategic plan, it's not that we hand that off to you and say, good luck, report back to us in a year on how it's going. We should be directly impacting our strategic plan as well through the policies that we vote to pass, through the discussions that we have, through budget conversations, through everything. And so we even talked about, once this is, being implemented, tying back all of the items on our agenda to, hey, where does this fall in our strategic plan? How is this moving us towards that goal? So I just want to, as we do enter into this next plan, just keep that at the forefront of all of our conversations, that we're active partners in implementing this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, staffing update, Mr. Mills.
One of the perks of my job is I get to offer positions to teachers, and then they get all excited and accept. And then we have that happen in Washington this week. We had a student teacher that did her student teaching at Washington Elementary in first grade, first semester, and now she's subbing. And Veronica and I and a couple others interviewed her and went over and offered the position to her at Washington yesterday. So we have a new first grade teacher. And what I love about brand new teachers, they accept and they give. whereas experienced people, they gotta think about it for a couple days. This is our new vacancy list I wanted to share with all of you. Here, Brandy, I think she's got it. This is something the HR department, which would be Jordan and myself, created, that we wanted something that was easy to look at, and it has all of our positions on it, and then you can see on the right where we start adding those names. And I would just have to say with resignations are way down. We're happy about that. Want to keep that going. So you see that. So this is our new vacancy list that we work with, and then that we'll just fill this in as we go. But I wanted the board to have this so that on our staffing update, it might be a little bit easier than hearing the words and things like that. Just have it all written down. Any questions about that? The other thing I want to report to the board, we do have 4 student teachers in the district right now. Randy and I will be going out and meet with them and taking some pictures here in the next week. So I just want to make sure that you guys knew that we're working closely with them. The principals are working closely with them. Their advisor was here Tuesday. I didn't get a chance to meet with him, but he met with all of them as well. So we'll continue to support those folks too, which goes to strategic plan of that, retaining them and maybe possible future teachers as well. So we're excited to have those 4 with us this year. Questions about staff?
That's nice. I like the old chart.
I do think, not to steal any thunder from Angela or Skip, John Spots, Executive Director of NASB, did take a moment to speak to the group on Monday. He did talk about a celebration across the state in terms of the 24-25 vacancies as compared to 23-24. I believe in 23-24, we're at 950. What came from the survey that ND does every fall? They send a survey to every school district. What do you say, 700?
600, it's down by a third.
Yeah. So what has been reported, I think we're seeing a positive trend in terms of probably has to do with retention across school districts. We're keeping teachers and then we're able to fill those positions. There is a little bit of discussion that maybe Metro reported theirs a little bit differently, that they actually have vacancies that for this year they have filled with a non-certificated or non-endorsed person. I did have a conversation with one of the Metro superintendents. He thinks that number is down. He doesn't think it's quite far as down as what the survey indicated. So hopefully that trend continues, that we keep lowering that number of vacancies on an annual basis. But we are trending in the right direction the last 3 years in terms of our retention rate is up, and it's gone up each year the past 3 years. So we're keeping our people at a better rate than we have in the past. And Mr. Mills does an outstanding job of recruiting and filling positions as well. So I think I feel very fortunate as compared to talking to some of our colleagues, maybe that are in smaller rural schools that have a little bit more difficult time filling their vacancies.
Anybody else have any other questions? Mr. Mills, did you have anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Perfect. I had one thought that I was spurred in thinking of this as we were going over strategic plan. But just a thought on staffing. Is there any way that we can collaborate? I don't know if the chamber would be the right entity, but like for our other organizations in our community that are recruiting employees, if they have spouses who have degrees in education and those kinds of things. I just had that thought that would be, maybe we could collaborate on some recruiting efforts.
Yeah.
All right, on to our finance and budget update for the evening. Mr. Simpson, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you very much. I really want to just take a look, just limited time, but really just talk about a couple of things. Number one, you get information from NASB in regards to timelines that you should be aware of as board members. what I have done over the past years is taken that and put it more into a fiscal year or a school calendar year timeline of what you need to be aware of. I was looking at this as Dr. Rhodes and I had received an update on preliminary state aid. I needed to put that information in this document so that I have all the information in here so that you're aware of what's coming up here in the future, so that you know that we're starting to roll accounts forward. We're starting to look at building budget allocations, so then we can start putting a little bit of the budget together for next year, so we can be ready. Obviously, we've settled with teachers, so that makes it a whole lot easier down here. So I know, but I still have to be prepared. The other piece is that I just wanted to update the board on our insurance for the district, and I have a 4-year 4 years of information from our insurance that we have in the district, and this is our liability, workers' comp, so forth in the district, and what you can see that we worked through locally. Hub is sort of the umbrella company, and then we work with EMC, which handles our general liability, automotive, and then we have different companies from there for workers' comp, cyber liability, and I've tried to attach a little bit of that with this document so that you can see. The big thing we're noticing is, number one, our personal property is increasing each and every year. You can see it went up 9%. Then based upon what the industry is seeing, and we're going to see that again this next year with the East and West Coast and what's happening. Based upon those costs, we're going to see another increase in our premium that way. But that increase, we had to increase our deductible for hail and wind from 25 to 75,000, just to keep that cost a little bit under control. We continually look at different companies to provide cyber liability. I think we've changed each and every year, and it's just, you know, how much they cost. We really haven't had any issues with cyber liability. Our tech department, when they're not servicing me, are doing an excellent job keeping that under control as far as cyber liability. So we're continually monitoring that, but we do have a change constantly in regards to controlling that cost. And you can see it went down about $7,000. The other piece that we are working on, but it just is relative to staff and what's happening, but we go through our safety videos. We try to address, especially if we do have weather, how to walk in this weather, as well as controlling that. But, you know, our experience mod has increased over the last 4 years. And so you can see that increase in premium from last year to this year. So it's just the telltale sign of what we're living with. So I just wanted to make you aware of that and what we're having to put through. Next year, our insurance costs will probably come through in, I'm going to say July, August. EMC takes a while to put items together just because of where the industry is going. We will know a little bit more in regards to workers' comp because they're required to put that through in January, and then Dakota, it's actually Dakota Truck, which is weird, but they were a truck company and then they modified it into workers' comp. And so they handle our, and it's actually RAS, but you can see their information. So that's where we are with the calls. So next year, we're going to be evaluating, you know, at least increasing our insurance costs a little bit as I put the budget together, even though I'm leaving. Questions in regards to the budget calendar?
You took my question. I was going to ask about next year's,
Yeah.
when we receive that.
Yeah.
Statement. So.
I had just a question, maybe won't have an answer tonight, but just to think for on future planning. I know in the past we've done some budget workshops outside of committee of the whole that were just focused longer sessions. Are we planning, do we have any kind of tentative timeframes for some of those items? Because I want to make sure we give people ample time to plan.
Yeah, most likely, we actually the last few years have scheduled more budget workshops than we had. I think typically districts have had one, to get everybody ready and then get that budget put to bed. But in today's world, you probably need two. I would think probably June, we would have our first one. That way, Mr. Simpson is still here. Between he and I, we should have 92 to 93% of the budget done at that point. So Dr. McDonald isn't coming in and having to do a budget at the last minute. So probably a June and maybe a late July, early August is what I would propose at this point.
Along with that, Emily, we'll get some information on our, I want to say LD 243, but it's dealing with property taxes and how the state calculates. That'll come out at the end of May. I'm not sure on state aid this year if the certification will be on March 1st or based upon all the TOSA formula legislation that's going through, if that will be postponed in June. So we'll have a few dollars coming through there. Then the third one will be preliminary evaluation will come out in June. So we'll have that information for budget workshop.
Great, legislative updates. We have several different sections underneath there. There's been a lot going on. So we'll start with Dr. Rhodes and Mr. Simpson giving us an update from GNSA.
So on Wednesday, January 15th, Mr. Simpson and I had a GNSA business meeting in Lincoln. And we talked about some legislation at that meeting. Of course, that was still fairly early on, but to give you an idea of what GNSA, and this was as of Tuesday, 2 days ago, our GNSA schools are monitoring right now about 35 bills. 17 of those were in fairly strong opposition to, and 7 we support, and the other 11 or so we're just kind of monitoring right now. We'll have to see what comes out of hearing, what's prioritized in those different types of things. So it really runs the gamut right now. There are a few that are curricularly related, not as many as we've had in past years, which is a good thing. But there's some legislation on limiting when you can have a bond election. There's a lot in terms of TOSA. I think Mr. Simpson mentioned that earlier. Janet Hughes's budget bill is one to keep an eye on as we go through. Doesn't really have a negative effect. It would be positive from the standpoint of increasing foundation aid. And so we'll watch those very closely. There's probably a half dozen that could be negative in terms of the impacts of hail. So we'll watch those closely. We are, again, a member of GNSA, and we'll be meeting again in February. Those will be virtual meetings, February, March. We will go to Lincoln in April to meet with senators again. We did have a senator's reception after our business meeting. It was not very well attended by the senators. I think we had 4 or 5 senators that were able to show. So I think with that, I'll have Stuart talk a little bit about NCSA.
I serve on the NCSA Legislative Committee, and we met on Friday, January 24th, and it was for 2.5 hours, a little bit less than what Skip meant. And but we continually get updates from Mike Delaney with NCSA. The last update we received, there's about 100 bills that NCSA is watching. When we went through the bill list that Friday, we focused on about 27 bills that were through, And what I did is try to categorize them between how we're opposing, how we're supporting, or just monitoring it. And so what I want to say is that of all the legislation that I was looking at with NCSA, and that's a myriad of superintendent, business managers, sped directors, teaching and learning people. So they cross the section of all administrators coming to that. But only 20% of all 27 bills were supported. The remaining are either opposed, monitor, neutral, or didn't comment on it one way or another. So the problem is that we're seeing not a lot coming out that wants to help support students in Nebraska, and that's the biggest concern. So we're watching it. And probably as you'll hear that mantra from the three of us going through tonight and then going into the next few months, because we're in a 90-day session. So we're going to be monitoring that a lot. I do want to mention though, which is interesting because we didn't hear it a lot. I just picked it up from my bill list that I received on the 24th. There is 4 bills out there that are shell bills that just sit there that are referencing something. 3 of them are in education, 680, 681, and 682. And they reference something, but we all know based upon past experiences that it may reference something, but it's going to be shoved in about other items coming through. And then the other one is 713 on retirement. And that was a shell bill. It could take the realm of education, but it also could take the realm of revenue or something else in regards to the legislature. So that's a big concern for us as well.
I think, as you know, for the last couple of years, the legislature has had an appetite for omnibus bills, Christmas tree bills, where the only way that they could really build any consensus around a bill is just to put 20 or 30 into a shell bill, as Mr. Simpson said. And the problem with that is you get some good legislation that comes out of that, but you get some really, really bad legislation. And I would throw out McKinney's suspension bill that you can't suspend K2 students that was put into an omnibus bill. I don't think that passes on its own. And I don't think it has 33 votes to pass on the floor, but it got put into a bill that had 23 different components to it and had enough good components in it that it had enough votes to pass. So that's the danger with omnibus bills. And I have had conversations with Senator Jacobson. He is not fond of this, but it is a way they can conduct business on the floor to get things through.
Does the GNSA and the NCSA have kind of like the flyer we got at the NASB conference where it says the different bills and how they feel on
Well,
them
so
that we can see?
we have an executive director, and this is kind of what they email out. I can share that. I'll share this in the update tomorrow.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And this was as of Tuesday. And just like NASBs or NCSAs, it changes
Right.
daily based on the hearings and what comes out and what's prioritized.
Mine doesn't really go through and have thumbs up or down on a form like you saw. It's mostly, we talk about it and then we come to consensus or motion to oppose, and I just have those written down on a piece of paper at this point.
Typically, the education community is very, very much together when it comes to opposition. Or once in a while, one group might be neutral and 2 might be supportive, but yeah, we can get that,
Well,
so you have an idea. Of
Yeah, not to go into the next one, but I love learning this stuff, and this is very new for me. So, but I like to see, like I had asked Skip, I didn't understand why we shouldn't have, I don't remember what it was, something in a classroom. I was like, so print it on a piece of paper, put it up there. And Skip said, well, you have to laminate it, you have to have it in the frame, and that's the cost. And oh, well, that makes perfect
Yeah, I
sense.
think we estimated about $3,000.
Yeah.
I'll start this.
And so I was like, oh, well, that makes sense, but that was something I didn't think about, so it's kind of nice to just see that and see why they said thumbs down and call Skip and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. Explain it. Skip's like, don't give her that.
I have all the rationale on why we voted the way we did. My committee met Sunday, it was last Sunday, the 26th. We started at 11. We were done a little after 4 at the NASB office. We have there's approximately 22 people on the committee, 10 of them are new. Other than John Spots, Colby, Boag, the rest are all school board members. From Class A to the top smallest schools you can think, from north, south, east, and west. And it's pretty well evenly divided. This year, 733 bills and constitutional amendments were put in. That didn't average out to 20 a person, by the way. 100 of those are the ones that the NASB is looking at. Because they look at either they go to the education committee, the revenue committee, which is money, or the government committee, which is Open Meeting Act. So we discussed these, we talked, we did the same thing, oppose, support, monitor. And then the results were given the next day. And we had already done some of them because we meet every Monday via Zoom call at 10 o'clock. And that goes from either till 11 or 11:30. We didn't meet this past Monday because we were all there, but this coming, I just got the agenda for today. And a lot of the education hearings start next week. They do post that on an NASB website.
Okay.
So as the bills we haven't talked about yet get on there, you can get on and they will show you how the committee voted. And again, if you ever want to know, when she just brought it, if you want to know a specific about a bill, because I bring my notes actually every time the legislature starts. And I just keep adding to them as we discuss the bills of why it was. Now, not all the time is the committee unanimous. Sometimes it's big schools, small schools, splitting them. But most of the time, a big majority is in agreement. Sometimes the bill gets monitored because there's no real consensus for it. That was my committee. And again, if you guys have any questions about a bill, all you have to do is get a hold of me and I'll have the rationale behind why the committee voted that way on it to support. And people go down and testify. We have a lot of people that are testifying, school board members this week. Most of them from the Lincoln area to get there and so forth. So, and Omaha. And I will tell you, a lot of times Omaha is opposed to what a lot of other people are in favor of. Very true. And they have 3 of the members there. But they're a whole different entity to themselves, even more so than Lincoln. Yeah. So, and 14 of the bills, by the way, deal with policy. 14 of them. And a ton of them are on our money. She used a good example, they want to think of a great idea and then they say, do it, unfunded mandates or. So, okay, that was my.
All right, and then there was also the NASB Legislative Issues Conference, which Angela, Skip, Dr. Rhodes, and they're also right. So I'd love for you guys to provide the rest of us who couldn't attend any takeaways from that or any.
I loved that conference. It was probably it's probably one of my favorite ones because I'm really getting into this legislative thing. I'm liking it. The first night though was amazing. We heard from Jay Martin, who is an ex-police officer, and he works with safety, and he talked a lot about cell phones. And some of the stuff was really touching and scary they had moms going with their daughters and they were saying how their cell phones are very positive and how it makes them look great online. And then they turned around and they took the mom's face and made a video of how girls need to have Botox and they need to go on diets. And it was all negative stuff that AI did. And the moms were just sitting there like, I would never say that to my kid. I would never say that to anybody. And that really hit hard. So I think we should have him come talk to our school. And, he also showed about, our cell phones and how they're listening to us and how the different AI works and all that stuff, because, you make a comment about salads and all of a sudden you have recipes and stuff coming up on your phone. So anyways, it was kind of scary how I was able to relate all of that to life. Then the next day, we got to listen to 4 different senators came and talked to us. I'm gonna get the guy's name or the name wrong. Von Gillen? Okay, that person. Arch, Hughes, and Mervin came and talked to everyone and talked about the bills that they were presenting, and it was interesting to hear some of their takes on things. And I did get to talk to a couple of them afterwards and just said, well, here was your bill. What do you think will happen if this happens or if that? And one of the senators looked at me and was like, well, I never thought of that. And I thought, okay, you obviously don't have my mother, because my mother plays devil's advocate all the time. So, but it was interesting to be able to talk to them and kind of see where their mind was coming with their bills. And then we got to have lunch with Mike Jacobson, and that was really nice. I surprisingly got the seat next to him, so I asked him all of my questions. So sorry to everybody else at the table.
Yeah, the main thing, you brought up the senators. This was a much more positive meeting than probably the last 3 or 4 years that I've attended this from the senators. Von Gilleren is now the head of the revenue committee. And he is much more open-minded than the previous committee chair, much more so. And they were very, that they could work together. That was the main thing I got out of all of them except Herman. They got together, the fact that they can work together. And Senator Jacobson sitting there with us. And there were people, by the way, at our table. They did it differently this year, which was good. They kind of assigned the senator to a table, and then the number of people that had registered from that district, we had a table, and I had to meet Senator Jacobson and bring him to the table, but there were 2 from Perkins County, 2 from Hershey, 2 from Brady, and then us, I believe. Yeah, so he talked about a lot of things for an hour. Yeah. And they had questions, especially the Brady superintendent had several questions. So that part is really good, specifically when they show. We used to have a senator that never showed up. But it was much more positive than the past years about maybe being able to get things done and to compromise. So we will see how it goes. And you have to wait to see which bills get out of committee. That's the big thing. Once the hearings are done, then they put them to the floor. A bunch of these bills will never get out of committee. So
I think that probably is well attended.
yeah,
it was very, very.
I they said 300 and something. Yeah.
Really filled the ball. Yeah, actually. I guess the last thing, I'm gonna mention one bill because I think it's important that as board members that you may, if it does end up hitting the floor for debate, I would just encourage you to reach out to Senator Jacobson and any other area, Senator Ibaugh from Sumner or Senator Storer from Upwood Whitman, is LB 645. Because it could be the detriment of the profession, and that is the retirement bill. That's a Bo Ballard bill, and that is to reduce the amount of state input into state employee retirement system, which right now is at 2%. And Bo Ballard's argument is you pretty much have a very fully funded retirement program. You don't need money from the state. And it would certainly save some general funds from the state, but he is requesting, or his bill changes that 2% to 0.4%. And I think for us that have been in business for a while, we could see that retirement and what it's accrued losing very quickly. I think the other fear that we have is OPERS, the Omaha retirement system, is now kind of lumped in with NEPRS. They're still separate. But we don't want to steal one to pay for the other, and I think OPERS is in the whole $1 billion.
Yes.
And so the Omaha Public School System retirement system is in bad condition. That's the reason the state took it over.
That's right.
To try and beef that up. But I worry about young educators or young people thinking about going in and saying, well, that retirement system isn't as great as what I have been told if this were to go through. So it's
I
gonna,
was
I
just
think
gonna
it's
say that affects our strategic plan.
yeah, we really want to pay attention to that one. I think it does have the support of the governor. So I would not be surprised to see that come out of committee or be prioritized and be on the floor as well. Again, our retirement system is at about 99%. It is really, really fully funded right now, and it has been for several years.
And it's really not hard to get a hold of the senators and to email.
Yeah.
You know, call their office
And they
talk to
will
them.
answer, or they're able.
Or they're phone.
Yeah, so I think that's one we want to keep on just for our people and professionals across the state of Nebraska.
Anything to add to that?
No, I'm good.
What?
Really? Anybody have any questions for those who attended about the conference or any of the bills?
No, but I do want to thank you guys for letting me go to that. That was.
I went to that one a couple of years ago and I felt like I learned
Yeah.
it is a good one to attend for sure. Okay, our next agenda item, the committee of the whole calendar and discussion. So there is an attachment there with the calendar of our proposed.
Yeah,
meetings.
and Sheila has that up on the screen. It's also attached, as Emily said. This is just kind of a draft, a first blush, but really the only thing that potentially could change with this calendar would be the actual room location at the building. And I do need to confirm this with the building principals as well and share this with them. I've already talked to Mr. Spatansky about the February committee of the whole being at the high school and Mr. Ayers on the March committee of the whole being at Adams. So that just kind of gives you an idea. You will notice that in this is a 10-month calendar because we had decided at the January meeting, we weren't going to meet in November and December. You will notice on here that the only building that is not on here is in Buffalo. Now, there was nothing intentional about that. It's kind of the way it worked out. My recommendation would be is that one of our budget workshops, we have a Buffalo. So that we can get in that building, we can do a tour either before or after. So, and I just put down below, the meetings will still be at 5:30. The dates are on there. And then of course the actual room in those buildings can change. So.
All right, unification training. Dr. Rhodes.
Yeah, just another FYI, March will be here before we know it. We were one of 3 districts that was chosen by MDE, Scott Stemper, Safety and Security, and Jay Martin's involved in that office. Actually, he is the Safety and Security Director. One of 3 districts chosen to utilize grant monies to have a reunification training. So we jumped on it right away, visited Mrs. Busher and Sergeant Johnson. So on that March 19th, it's a Wednesday, we will not have school 9/12. We will have school PK through 8th grade. Now, we talked about maybe having that a non-school day for everybody, but the 17th, we don't have students. So to bring them back on a Tuesday and then it just didn't make sense. And the reason it's at the high is no school for 9/12 is we're having the reunification training at the high school. About 120 of our internal people, I think we have 16 from the North Platte Police Department officers that'll be there. We'll have state troopers there from this area, and then Lincoln County Sheriff officers office is sending some deputies to be a part of this training as well. We'll all be a part of that training. Some of our administrative assistants will be a part of that training as well. So real excited about that. We're gonna start getting that communicated out to the public and particularly at the high school, that'll be a no school day. It actually is about a $15,000 grant. If we were to go out and look for this training on our own, it would cost us about 15,000. So it was just the opportunity to actually have a training around education we've been past.
Great. Any questions on that?
Not really on that, but I had a question. Did we get another officer hired?
We're in the process there. Go ahead, Mrs. Bushy.
Oh, yeah, so we interviewed on Friday. The PD allowed us to be a part of that process, and so we interviewed 3 officers. I think it's public, like we selected Scott Miller. He's a younger guy, he has kids at Jefferson. So he'll be our SRO for elementary. And I think looking forward, we're probably gonna be having some other SROs. Officer Johnson will not be in our building next year. He'll be a sergeant for the SROs. So the beautiful part of that process is we really got to see the 3 officers who are interested in the position and talk to them about what grade levels are you comfortable with and get to know them pretty well. So I think we have a pretty good idea of who will be at the high school next year as well. And Officer Miller will start on Monday.
So right now,
Fantastic.
The training and.
yes.
Okay.
Well, I think all their officers are gonna be up. I mean, most of them, 16. They
So
took
even
16
whoever be
spots.
hired for that.
Yes,
position would
They
be
might still
part
get
of
somebody to actually be working.
And there are some trainings that Officer Miller, he's doing some virtual online right now. Eventually he'll have to go through the NASRO training, the National SRO training. Probably have to do the DARE training, because Officer Bollinger did some of our DARE as Sergeant Johnson does as well. So he's got some training to take care of that. Yeah, we were excited. Hats off to the city and to Chief Reeves because they were we need to get somebody in there for it.
It's awesome.
Because that all happened really, really quickly and they were on top of it right away. I think both of us were on the same page and they know the importance of having those officers. You know. Great question.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call to it.
Skip Ballsy.
Aye.
Angela Bailey.
Aye.
Justin Thomas.
Aye.
Diane Garrett.
Aye.
Stephen
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.
I know, right?